Welcome back. According to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, vehicle choice and crash differences help explain why women face greater injury risks when involved in a crash.
Yeah. It's interesting to note that they said both vehicle choice and situation leads to more risk. And the numbers get a little wonky, but I'll read it this way. Though men are involved in more fatal crashes than women, on a per-crash basis, women are 20 to 28% more likely than men to be killed and 37 to 73% more likely to be seriously injured after their survey adjusting for speed and other factors. The numbers indicate that women more often drive smaller, lighter cars, and that they're more likely than men to be driving the struck vehicle in a side impact and front into rear crashes. In other words, men will be doing the driving, and what are men driving? They're driving full-size pickups and heavy SUVs, which tends to lead right there that you're starting with a physics problem. That for the most part, women are more inclined to buy smaller, lighter vehicles. Men are inclined to buy bigger, heavier vehicles. And when the two meet, it never ends well because no matter what you do, you can't beat physics.
Yeah.
You can't beat physics. And that's crazy. Another thing, and it actually stemmed from a 2019 Consumer Reports article that argued the absence of a test dummy that represents the average adult female has had deadly consequences. And another author, Carolyn Credo Perez, flagged the issue in her book, Invisible Women, The Data Bias in a World Designed for Men, prompting many newspaper articles on the subject. Even the IIHS took a look to see what they might need to change in their testing protocol to allow for that. Because honestly, you're getting down to test dummies and trying. I think it's, how did they work this? It's like a 90 percentile male. It weighs about 165 pounds, 5'6" or 5'7", and that is the male that they allege all the testing. So all the testing you've seen on TV with the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety test dummies where they measure forces on the body in different types of accidents are not fairly representing women when confronted in the same situation, particularly when T-boned in a side front, accident or a situation where the vehicle is pushed into another one. So I found that really interesting because on the surface, it sounds kind of sexist.
Yeah.
But when you look at the data, particularly it's coming from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, which has legitimate bona fides when it comes to all this stuff. I mean, we quote them a lot. And we do that for a reason because their information is generally solid and they do the testing. They do the testing themselves. And it's a report that I get on a regular basis, almost quarterly, called their status report. It's from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety and the Highway Loss Data Institute. And I've been getting these for about 20 years, and they are full of information that is really crazy. So it says that not only women crashed in lighter vehicles, and it gives statistics. Around 70% of the women of the data that they looked at crashed in cars compared with 60% of the men. And like I said earlier, more than 20% of the men crashed in pickups compared with less than 5% of the women. And, in a separate analysis of data from the Federal Fatality Analysis Reporting System, the researchers also found that in two-vehicle front-to-rear and front-to-side crashes, men are more likely to be driving the striking vehicle. And because the driver of the striking vehicle is at lower risk of injury than the struck vehicle in such crashes, they could also account for some of the differences in crash outcomes for men and women. Well, if you think about it, I mean, you're behind, if you're hitting the vehicle, you're behind, at least in an internal combustion engine vehicle, all that sheet metal and steel that's in front of you. And on the typical vehicle, 65% of the weight is in front of you. Most people didn't realize that. In any front-wheel drive car, 65% of the entire weight of the vehicle is in front of you. So you've got all that metal designed to absorb the force of an accident. Now, on the flip side, you're hitting maybe the door or the B-pillar, and you're taking all of that with no crunch space. So hence, you've got a risk there. And you're driving maybe a small to compact car.
Yeah.
There's just no way for all that energy to go except transmit into the passenger compartment, leading to possible death and injury. Now, they did say that the researchers analyzed comparable front crashes did show some sex-related differences. Women were still more than 2.5 times as likely to suffer moderate leg injuries. And they were also 70% more likely than men to suffer serious leg injuries. And I found that just wow. Just wow. And they're looking at, and I'm looking at this, looking at both all front crashes and controlling for vehicle crash differences. If you're looking at all front crashes, women were 338% more likely to sustain moderate injury and 172% when balanced out for vehicle and crash differences. If you even that out, it was still almost 200%. When it comes to serious, you're looking at probably almost 75% more for serious injury. Injuries to head, neck, torso, and pelvic injuries, 70% more likely for women to have moderate injuries as opposed to 71% for serious injury.
Something you wouldn't even think about.
Yeah, something you wouldn't think about. Again, this is where you get into testing protocol and methodology, all of this stuff that comes together when evaluating a vehicle, that it gets important. If you're not accounting for this, then you can't adjust for it. It's proven down through the years that the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety testing has had a definite impact on the improved safety features that we find today in vehicles, and that the vehicles are safer. You know, when they release those videos showing these vehicles crashing in and how they do, bear in mind that what they do is higher than the federal standards. And again, I've said it before, I will say it now, shocker, there is no federal standard for what we call a frontal offset crash. None. Zero. Zip. The only reason why you're seeing those and why these vehicles are safer is due specifically and solely to the work of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. Full stop. The reason, and the fact that now they're making it what they call asymmetrical, that I can never pronounce that word, but basically that they treat both sides of the front, whether it's offset frontal for the driver, offset frontal for the passenger. Up till recently, the front passenger was at more risk, and you wouldn't think so because they didn't build the car that way. They were building a car or the truck or the SUV to meet the test standards that they're being tested for. And you would have thought they would have made the whole front the same. They didn't till recently. Now they do, where front passengers now have the same level of safety that the driver does. And that was a little known fact that blew me away that I did not know.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing what you find out. But this is what's going on. There's a need for this. I'm sure as the IIHS addresses it and makes changes, that the automakers will pay attention and make changes and make vehicles, be they SUVs, cars, minivans, whatever, safer for everybody, not just men, but women too.
Keep this in mind during Distracted Driving Month too.
Ain't that the truth? Finally, we discuss centralized power generation and the promise it holds for you and your neighborhood.